The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of their institutions, employers, or affiliates. This content is for informational and discussion purposes only and should not be taken as official policy, guidance, or advice. Hello, welcome to episode 3 of our podcast, AI on the Quad. We're here to talk with thought leaders, trailblazers, and interesting folks about how AI is impacting and transforming education. I'm your host, Phil Spitzy.
And I'm your co-host, Andy Tynes, and we are excited to welcome Travis Nation to the podcast today. Travis, for the audience who may not know you, can you please just kind of give us an overview of your current role, what that entails, et cetera? That'll help our audience understand kind of where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. Thanks, Phil and Andy, for inviting me here today. So as mentioned, I'm Travis Nation. I serve as the Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Seattle University. For those not familiar with Seattle University, we are in Seattle, believe it or not, and have about 7,500 students, both undergrad and graduate, several programs at colleges and so forth. For my specific role, I oversee all the technology at the university, both academic and non-academic, the administrative side of things. We do have some partners that I engage with on the academic side especially, but we are primarily centralized as well. So I know a lot of institutions have decentralized IT. We're primarily centralized. So my team oversees most of the technology, and then we have a few partners across campus that assist us with that. But again, happy to be here, happy to be chatting with you and the audience out there.
Awesome, perfect, and yes, I'll add my thanks as well, Travis. It's great to have you here. For those who may also not know, Seattle University is part of the Jesuit network of colleges and universities around the country. And I worked at a campus previously, and there's obviously a strong focus on educating and nurturing the whole person from that Jesuit standpoint. I'm curious to learn how you see AI being integrated into kind of that vision of the Jesuit education model, or even at the curriculum level. What's that going to look like, do you think?
Yeah, well, thanks for noting that. That is critically important for all Jesuit colleges and universities. The whole person is what we're all about. We believe that we're here to educate, to get them to professional formation, to do great things in the world beyond their academic careers. And so, as you think about AI, and we've all been in this industry a long time, we've seen a lot of these, I'll just say fads come along, these new things that come and then they kind of go away. Certainly, we're in that time with AI where there's a lot of talk. You can't help but see it. A lot of investment in the markets out there and so forth. So we're seeing AI really take off. Now, whether it ends up being the end all be all, who knows, right? But we do know that it is going to impact the world that we live in. And when we think about the students we're educating today, they're going to be going into industries that expect them to know how to use AI in productive, ethical, practical ways. So I think it's incumbent on us, especially in a Jesuit institution, to really teach the students how to leverage this technology. And then again, thinking about whatever comes next beyond AI. How will they adapt to that? So, the students that we graduated 10 years ago, AI wasn't a thing. So they're having to adapt to that in their professional careers as well. So it's not just about teaching the technology, but it's teaching them how to think about that technology, how to apply it in practical and ethical ways throughout their career as they continue to learn and grow. Again, what we're seeing with AI today, we all know that what it'll look like 5 years from now will probably be very different. So we can't teach the exact thing today. We have to be thinking about it more as a philosophy and some fundamental principles and guidelines.
All right, right. And that, sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a great approach because you're exactly right. We have no idea what this thing's going to look like 2, 3 years from now, let alone 5 years from now.
Right.
So, and as
Heck,
we,
Andy, it might be different in 2 or 3 months, the way things are
yeah,
going, right? So,
it really could be. Yeah, it's the change is happening so fast, just exponentially. So, I think that approach makes a lot of sense to me. Just let's put just some guardrails in place. Let's kind of teach the fundamentals, but more importantly, let's make sure they understand what's the best way to approach and leverage AI, so that you're doing it hopefully intelligently and responsibly.
Andy, that's so true. And one of the things that we need to do is ensure that our students graduate with the thought leadership and the domain that they're pursuing. So whatever that area is, as we all know, we've heard the stories of hallucinations. There's the example of the attorney who used AI to come up with their materials. I mean, there's been so many of these things. What's critically important to us at Seattle University, and I assume a lot of other institutions as well, is to make sure that those students that are going out there, they know how, when, why, how can I validate that AI is returning information that is valuable, that is accurate, that is dependable? How is it helping me think beyond what I was doing before, not replace my thinking? It's an augmentation to their thinking, not the replacement of that. So there are things like that we still have to do our fundamental core job. It's just bringing in a new technology that could be leveraged in appropriate ways.
That,
So,
that brings to mind a recent, I guess, kind of, I don't think analogy is the right word, but reference point, which is the human AI sandwich, where you start with the human to provide the inputs, the context, the personality that they want used. The AI generates the meat, and then the human at the other end of the sandwich is doing that validation, that verification, right? And you end up with this sandwich approach where there's always a human in the loop, and
Absolutely.
it's trust but verify. And maybe trust is too strong a word just yet, right? But accept but verify, maybe. So that there is still that model of that critical thinking side of it, right? You use the lawyer example. I think there's now been a few dozen of those. I'm referencing this case law. That case doesn't exist, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bad scene when you're doing that in the court. And the thing is that thinking again about these students who will be graduating and going to employers, we the reality is that higher education is here to educate, to prepare students for professional formation for their future, right? And the employers that are taking our students are looking for students that can leverage AI in the right ways. Again, we're not looking to replace the basic learning, it's to enhance that basic learning, to leverage it. We've all heard the example of, well, what was it like before the calculator? And then the calculator was brought in and so forth. It's similar in some respects as that. You still need to know how to do math in order to know how to leverage a calculator in effective ways. That said, it's less about the memorization and so forth. I personally leverage generative AI tools frequently. And what I find is I still have to know the material, I still have to go in and do those things. But then it can either enhance or add flavor to things that I've put in there, things perhaps that I hadn't thought of. So, for example, a position description, and then you use it, and it comes out with a more rich position description helps me think about the wording. And to your point, Phil, I then go back through and will put it back in my language and I'll put that human sandwich component on there. Start with a strong prompt, get AI to do something, and then at the end, I go back in and polish it and so forth. So it's still there still needs to be a human involved with this. And we've all heard that saying from I don't know who even started it, but It won't be the AI that replaces the person. It'll be the person who knows how to leverage AI that replaces the other one. So, it's that saying. So how do we prepare our students for AI? Again, that's here today, but again, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever that is, it's going to be very different. So we need to have an adaptable and a continuous growth mindset on these things.
Rick, yeah, that to me that's where the intersection of the Jesuit education model and it could be any new technology. AI happens to be the technology of the day. What is it? In the future. So it's that it's I think it's everything that you said. It's understanding the ethics, it's understanding the who, what, why, how, when, right aspect of applying whatever the new technology is. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, can you talk a little bit about how Seattle University is approaching it from a strategic standpoint? The adoption or integration of AI, either on the academic or administrative side or both. What do you kind of see as at one end of the spectrum, the low-hanging fruit,
Mhm.
and then at the other end of the spectrum, what are some of the more transformative opportunities?
Well, thanks, Phil. It's interesting. I think every institution that is engaging with AI thinks they're behind. Everyone says, "Oh my gosh, there's somebody out there doing so much more." When we are putting together a task force, if you will, a group that really kind of lead our holistic university efforts in this. Um, and when we started investigating across campus, what we found is there's a lot of great stuff happening in different pockets around campus. So we just needed to bring that together to make sure we're leveraging each other's knowledge and not duplicating work or countering other work. So that was one thing. We, like a lot of institutions, when, a couple of years ago when AI was first being talked about, we didn't know what to really do. And we were keeping our eyes wide open. One of the things we did was we amended our academic policy to say, hey, if you're using generative AI, you need to cite it. So that was something we did back then. We didn't say you couldn't use it, nor did we say you had to use it. We just said, hey, if you do use it, make sure it's cited and so forth. So we did that a long time ago, and then we've been basically allowing faculty to experiment in different ways. So if faculty want to put it in their course, they can use it in their course in whatever way is appropriate. Like a lot of institutions and a lot of people generally, we have some faculty that are really on board and some faculty that are less excited about it. For us, though, as I mentioned, is part of it for us is we recognize that employers are going to expect this. So we're embedding it into our core curriculum across the board. So that is an action that we are doing right now. It's one of our strategic initiatives to ensure that every student that graduates Seattle University will have at least a basic understanding of AI, and specifically right now generative AI, so that they know how to use it. Again, going back to all those things, the ethical use and so forth. Another thing about a Jesuit institution that we haven't touched on in AI is the environmental impact and the equitability to making sure that all students have access to it. The environmental impact from these things take a lot of compute and so forth to do. So we're trying to balance that as well. This isn't hey, let's just jump in and ignore all of those realistic and fair criticisms of AI. So we're trying to incorporate that in as well, so that when I mention things like the ethical use of AI, I'm talking as well about the, if you will, the social good aspect of it. Just using AI for AI's sake probably isn't the best social benefit. So there's a lot of factors around that. So again, we've put together a group that is leading our AI work, focused on our strategy. I participate on the academic side because I've got a lot of areas to cover there, but I am also leading our work on the administrative side. So some of the areas you asked about low-hanging fruit, again, it's working with faculty who are excited about the potential use of AI in their courses. I think of areas like computer science, where we know the computer science graduates are going to need to know how to leverage AI. It's just what's being expected out there. So that's an example of one where we're really trying to strengthen our relationship with faculty and build out programs that do it. Now, one of the things you have to think about as part of that is the assessment aspect. So we look at, how do you assess knowledge? Well, the way we used to do it was one way. Well, maybe it's time to look at it a little bit differently now with AI out there. It may be less about memorization and recall and more about application of knowledge. And so that's another area where we're really trying to understand, what does that assessment change look like? Again, we talked earlier about the calculator. If you think about, doing math assessments before the calculator and math assessments after the calculator, well, you've had to adjust those things. So it's thinking through those aspects as well. On the administrative side, some of the low-hanging fruit we've seen are things like the AI chatbots. I mean, we've all seen those out there. Frankly, what we are finding, we've deployed them in a couple of areas, and what we're finding is our students prefer to engage with them. I think there's I don't want to ask a dumb question, if you will. Well, to ask it of AI really doesn't matter. And so they don't feel as shy asking those questions. The other thing it does for an institution our size is it allows us to provide 24 by 7 support for areas that we could never afford to staff 24 by 7. So that's a huge advantage to our campus community in those areas. Now, again, you have to be watching the things so it doesn't hallucinate, doesn't provide invalid responses. I will tell you, it's kind of funny. Uh, as we've gone into this, we use sources like our website, some of our, if you will, our knowledge base articles, things like that, the things that are kind of behind the scenes. And when we have found errors that have been reported through the chatbot interactions, we see, the question was asked of this and it gives this answer, but it'll tell us where it got the answer from, and we're like, that's not the right answer. Well, we go out, the website was wrong. That's what we're finding, is it's our own documentation that's wrong. It's not that the chatbot hallucinated our hours. No, it got our hours from this other page that we didn't know the hours were from years ago on, those kinds of things. So that's what we're seeing. So in another respect, if you will, another benefit is it's actually helped us clean up our own documentation. Things that we would have never noticed before, we're working towards and fixing. So it's going to be a continuous thing. What does it mean to adopt AI? I mean, when are you done? I don't know. It's certainly going to take some time, and as we've talked already, this is continually evolving. So what it looks like today will be very different than what it looks like some time from now. So it's important that we build a strategic program that continuously can evolve as the technology evolves and the features evolve.
It's interesting with the comment you just made about AI. There's no judgment there, right? So it encourages the student or anybody, right, to be curious and ask questions, because you don't have to worry about being judged by Gemini, right?
Correct.
Although just last night I was writing an email, and I can't remember, Gemini or ChatGPT, and I said, rewrite this for me, please. And it started out with, yeah, that's a bit wordy. I was like, ouch. That's the first time I've ever been like called out by AI.
Wow.
This made
I
me
guess
laugh.
it put you in your place, Andy.
It really did put me in my place, but then it gave
Wow.
me a nice, the concise email that I was looking for. So it's still a win for me. So
That is funny. It's great when we use those things. You put in your prompt and it'll say things like, "Well, that's a really great question," or "You've got a great start here." I haven't had it say that's too wordy, so I'm gonna try it sometime to see what happens.
it's usually very complimentary. You're right. Yeah. This time it was like, wow, that's a little wordy, Andy. Thanks.
But to your point about the judgment, what we find is sometimes students are afraid. I don't want to just say students. I think as humans,
Yes.
sometimes we're afraid to put ourselves out there and say, wow, did I miss this or something? Well, if it's an AI tool, I'm not
No,
worried about that. I just ask the question and it'll give me the response. So I think it lowers that barrier. But again, I don't want to discount for an institution our size, having 24 by 7 support for students, faculty, staff, community members is quite incredible. I happen to know because I oversee the group, but I know what our network utilization is. And believe it or not, it's about 10 p.m. we start to see it really start to go up. And it doesn't come down till about 2 a.m. And so we see this huge spike in the evening time. I'm not staffing people between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. It's just not realistic. And so, for a student who may be working on homework, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, pretend they're working on homework at that time. But if they're working on homework or whatever the case may be, maybe they're trying to figure out what their financial aid is. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to register, whatever the situation may be, they can engage with the chatbot and get that type of information at a time that's convenient to them in a method that is convenient to them and easy for them to engage with. So it's changing the paradigm. We've said for years in higher education, we need to meet the students where they are. Well, having AI tools like this help us meet the students where they are. Things like you just brought up, Andy, using a generative tool for your email. That is a great thing. Now, a student can go in there, put it in the email and say, make this more professional, and it'll help them with those things. It'll show them what a professional email looks like. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity there.
absolutely. I mean, I do it all the time, and it saves me so much time. It allows me to get to the type of professional, formal, whatever style I'm looking for that email. I just ask it, hey, do this, and it gives me, well, here are three options. Which one do you like best? Or would you like it more formal? Or would you like it less formal? It's great. And
Yeah.
I can, especially, we all have to occasionally write, whether it's an email or a summary of something, and it can take 30 minutes to an hour easy to do it, um, where you get it to the point where you're happy with it. AI helps me reduce that time by 75, 80%, sometimes more.
Andy, I have a challenge for you. Prompt it to make the email more wordy.
That's a great idea. I am going to do that. I got to make sure I go back. I think it was Gemini. Gemini won't be so surprised by me asking that question because
Please
it
make
knows.
this email more wordy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's shifting gears just a bit, thinking about academic integrity. How do you think higher ed will or should balance
Mhm.
innovation with maintaining academic standards?
Yeah, I think this is where we run into the most challenge. I think there, again, faculty rightfully are concerned about the work that students are turning in, and they want to make sure that students are actually learning the material. I go back to the comment I made earlier around assessing knowledge. How are we assessing that knowledge? So, I will just say that although this problem is, I'll just say easier to exploit today, there's always been a challenge. You have a student write a thesis or write a report. Well, they could have hired somebody to write that report for them before. It's not like this is a new thing. It is new in the sense that it is much easier, perhaps, than it used to be, but it is not new. And that's one of the things that
Point.
frankly I'm constantly pushing back against is people will often say that, well, we've never had this issue before. Yes, we have had this issue before. We just didn't necessarily understand the scale and the scope of it. So the thing for me is working with faculty, working with our students and our population to understand where it's ethical, where it's appropriate, how are we using it? Set some clear boundaries. Part of this is on faculty to ensure that they've set when can you use it? How can you use it? How do you cite it? Those kinds of things to ensure that students understand the rules. What I will say is ignoring it is not going to make it go away. Pretending that it doesn't exist is not going to make the problem disappear. Students are using this, and frankly, in some respects, they should be using it. We've talked as a group here. We're all using it. We're using it in our professional lives. Why would we not want students to use it? So I think, again, it goes back to ensuring you have good academic policies in place. Faculty are setting clear expectations around things, communicating with students, explaining why it's important that students not use it in this context, but perhaps leverage it in another context, why those things are important, and so forth. We, as a group, have already talked about how we're leveraging it. I will sit there and use it, but I put in a very good prompt. I think it's a very good prompt to help it understand, which shows that I already have some knowledge of the material I'm looking for before I even start. So I think that's the big challenge is how do you put as, and I think Andy, you had said earlier, you used the term guardrails. How do we put these guardrails in so that we allow the students to use it in a responsible way and not go outside those boundaries?
It's like a lot of things, really, using things, doing things in moderation, where to your earlier point, you don't, and I run into these people all the time. So do you use II? No, I don't use it. I'm not going to use that stuff. They don't say why other than they just, I don't know if they're afraid of it or what. When they say it like that, I don't even bother asking. And then on the other end, maybe people using it too much. The analogy I'll use is it's not AI, but my daughters, for example, now that they drive, they use GPS, right, to go anywhere. Generally, I might use GPS, but I'll remember I don't necessarily need it the second time. They need it every time. It's because it's an over reliance on GPS. That's just kind of how they've grown up. We grew up differently where we didn't have GPS and I had to learn how to get from point A to point B on my own. Maybe I'd use a paper map. So it's very different. And is that an over reliance on GPS? In my opinion, it is. But at the end of the day, is it harming them in any way? I guess not. Although I think there is benefit to knowing where you're going without having to rely on your phone.
Andy,
Andy,
you were making me laugh. I was remembering printing out MapQuest directions. Sorry,
Oh.
I just
yeah,
sorry, Phil.
but no, that's where my mind went as well. And I too, any summer car trip vacation in the family, I was navigator. I knew every map, I knew every town, I knew every exit. But what you were just saying, Andy, actually illustrates the trust but verify,
Right.
because GPS can take you on some really weird routes, right? That
It can and
may
have.
not be the most efficient, right?
Right.
um, or may not be the most up to date, having you turn the wrong way down a one-way street that was recently reversed. That gets dangerous even. Um, and then I want to call out something that you said, Travis, that really just hit me during what you were saying. It feels like on the kind of the in the realm of cheating, it used to be a very underground culture, right?
Correct.
You meet somebody, behind the bleachers, you give them a tenner, they give you a report, right? And you turn it in, right? AI or Gen AI, these tools have made, I'm not going to say have made cheating mainstream, but they've made the opportunity to cheat much more mainstream. And I think that exactly goes back to what you were saying of it's on the faculty to have the conversation with the students, with the class, and to provide some of that guidance, to provide some of those insights. Yeah, you can get all the answers, but Joe, you've chosen, as your profession to be an engineer. Here's why you want to know some of the domain knowledge,
That's
and so on
that,
and so forth.
and that's to me the key thing, and it gets back to how do we assess knowledge? How are you going to, as an instructor, when that student graduates your course, how are you going to ensure they have actually retained what they need to retain? And sort of going back to what Phil was talking about, or I'm sorry, Andy, you were talking about a moment ago. Uh, my son, when he was younger, he was learning cursive, and he's like, Dad, why do I need to learn this? And I'm like, because you do. And he said, but when will I use it? And I thought, wow, I'm not sure you ever do, actually, And my point is that as we think about what we need to teach, we need to adjust that as well. Things we used to teach, maybe we need to spend less time focused on those things and more time focused on other things. Again, I am not a faculty member, so I don't want to tell faculty how to do their job. Certainly, they know it better than I do. At the same time, I think we need to get better about understanding what is it when students graduate this course, what is it they need to know? What is it they need to be able to recall? And what is it they need to just be able to leverage and extend and so forth? That's where I think we're struggling. And I think that's why we see a little pushback from some faculty. I don't know if it's most faculty, some faculty, but it's certainly more than zero faculty are not in favor of AI. And I think part of it is there's a fear. Part of it is it requires me to think differently about what does it mean to learn in my class. To your point, Phil, yeah, I could go out and write a prompt. It could be a beautiful prompt, get that final report, turn it in, and you know what? It looks like I know everything I know. The other thing I'll say is that, what was it, a couple years ago? We used to see a lot more hallucinations in AI, in Gen AI especially, that I just don't see it as much anymore. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, so you still need to be aware of it. But my point is, a couple of years ago, if a student did something like that, it would probably have a hallucination in it. Today, I don't know that I would count on seeing a hallucination in a final report anymore because it may not be there.
Right.
So that gets back to that whole assessment piece, and it's thinking about what does recalling memorized information, does that equal knowledge? Or is it something else? I think that's where we've got to really kind of navigate this AI world.
Well, right, because I think back to my school days where you were required to memorize something for whatever
Mhm.
class it is. Do I still remember it? Depends on the class, right? Memorizing some of those things has come in, how to how to add, subtract, divide, etc. That let's face it, that's I still need to know how to do that, even though I have a calculator. There are times when I have to do that. So is that memorization? I don't know. I learned how to do it. Maybe I memorized some of the functions early on, but I learned how to do it, right? So other things I know I don't remember. I don't remember books I read necessarily, and in English lit in high school. I remember some of them, but a lot of them I don't. I'm actually rereading them, some of them now, because it's like I'm reading Catcher in the Rye for the first time now, kind of. So, which is fun. But to the point, you're not memorization doesn't necessarily translate to learning, and AI, in a sense, is it redefining cheating? Because cheating now becomes more of a gray area a little bit. I can't say for sure when a student used AI, did they just copy and paste? Or did they write an iteration, hey, AI, help me make this better, and then reread it and actually retain some knowledge from that? It's hard for me to say.
That is exactly the challenge that I see with where we are today. Again, and I don't even know that I would call it cheating because again, in this conversation alone, we've talked about how we use AI
Right.
in our professional lives. So is it cheating that they're using it in their student life? Not if we want them to graduate with this knowledge. It's just the appropriate use of it, the ethical use, the knowing what lane to use it in. Again, put those bumpers up, those guardrails. Let them play within those guardrails so that they can figure out the way to leverage AI, enhance their learning, not replace their learning.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Um, let's think about from the standpoint of getting started. Um, you talked about, you've formed this kind of coalition or committee or group of folks to kind of almost train the trainer. It sounds like, right? This is how I've used it. This is how I've used it. You can kind of meld all of that together. So for colleges and universities getting started or maybe haven't yet got started, what would you say are the first maybe two or three things that they should think about doing? I don't know if it makes sense to try to prioritize those because it'll be different for everybody, but what are some of those first steps that you would recommend?
One, I think setting forth a clear guideline for faculty, for students. So in our case, again, we went into our academic policy. If you're going to use Gen AI, you need to cite it. So that was a very simple thing to do. Uh, and again, whether intentionally, in other words, we didn't send out an email, so it was more unintentional, that we said people could use it. Now it's up to the faculty member to allow it or not. So I think setting some clear guidelines for faculty to know, is it okay, is it not okay, da 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 da, and then let faculty decide on a course by course basis if that's the way they choose to go. But just setting from an institutional perspective, setting some of those guidelines up. The other thing I would recommend is, again, I would challenge that no institution or any institution has not started yet. They've started. There are people using AI on their campus right now. What they need to do is figure out who those people are, how they're leveraging it, and so forth. So if I'm an institution who maybe is earlier in the process, I'm going to look out to find out who's already doing this. Who are my early adopters? Who could share the benefits and the pitfalls that they've experienced thus far? Let's bring that community together and start having these conversations. The other thing that an institution should frankly do is look at who's hiring their students and then figure out what those employers are looking for when they graduate those students, when they hire them and so forth, because that's what we need to be aiming towards, is ensuring that our students that are graduating with these degrees and so forth are employable in especially in the fields that they're going for. Again, I cited earlier computer science majors. We know that the folks that are hiring our computer science graduates expect them to know how to leverage AI to enhance the work that they're doing. Well, if we're not teaching that as part of that curriculum, then we've got a gap, right? Now we're graduating students that don't have the basic skills, or at least that we're not teaching the basic skills to those students. So I think having, an institution that, one, sets some clear guidelines, two, engages with the faculty and others. Maybe there's people in the administrative side that are doing AI things, bringing that community, that group together. And then three, understanding what the employers are looking for their students and ensuring that the programs then it might take some changes to the actual program materials. Like I said earlier, we're doing this through our core programs and making sure our core courses all have some degree of AI built into them so that every student has some basic knowledge of AI as they go through their academic career. So I think those, if I were to give some basic recommendations, that would be, kind of basic. And then as you get further along, there's certainly more things you can do. Look to see what technologies are out there that could be beneficial. We haven't really spent a lot of time talking about the administrative side, other than I had noted the chatbot things that we're doing. But there are some real strategic advantages. Again, 24 by 7 support. Is your institution able to offer that? Those kinds of things, those can be real game changers. We've implemented something for our AI, I'm sorry, on the recruiting side with an AI chatbot feature that we're seeing tremendous uptake from prospective students on. And we're seeing data. That's another thing that comes out of this. We're able to analyze the data to see who's coming into that system, where are they from, and we're finding areas of the country that we never knew were hotbeds for potential students for Seattle University. We just weren't aware of that. Well, now that data comes in, so There's some things on the administrative side that can enhance efficiencies, streamline operations. We haven't really talked about agentic AI tools and so forth, but those kinds of things, there's some real opportunity. And I don't want to say you're going to do this and then lay people off. Certainly, we're all understaffed in most higher education institutions. That said, there is the reality of the financial pressures we're all under. And if we can leverage AI in a way that provides benefit to our community at a lesser price point than we might deliver it another way. Again, I couldn't afford to have 24/7 support, but I can do it this way. That's a tremendous advantage. And I think institutions that don't do this will be the ones we're talking about in 2, 3, 5 years, whatever the time frame is, that are talking about merging or closing or whatever, because you're going to have to do things to become financially viable. And AI may be a lever that you could exploit to get there.
Well, and that's at the bottom, at the end of the day, that's good holistically, right? Because if you're able to provide that 24/7 service now better than you could before without adding staff or reducing staff somewhere else. Because if you did that, that means you might be reducing some other service, right? Or
Right.
services to the students, to the faculty, et cetera. So it's not just good business sense. It allows you to continue to provide the level of services that you want and need to provide to your user communities.
You're absolutely right. And as I said before, it's about meeting the student or the faculty where they are and so forth. And that's what's critically important here. There are some real opportunities that we is certainly if there are institutional leaders right now, Phil, to your question, if there are institutional leaders that are looking at AI as a net negative for their institution, I would be seriously concerned. Now, I'm not saying fire all the people and replace them with AI. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying that it'll be those institutions that can leverage AI that will be doing better than the institutions that don't leverage AI.
And I want to thank you for bringing in the notion of industry, right? Because I think, and I'm at fault for this, it's too easy to think about your college days, your university days as kind of a bubble that you can sit back, you can enjoy your time, but really forgetting that it's prep for the rest of your life, career, family, society, etc. So I think that is an incredibly smart recommendation of yours to look at who the industry partners are, what are their expectations, and then feeding that back, right? So that you continue to elevate the level of prep for students as they prepare to graduate. I think that's really good. We are running a little bit short on time, which is always a good problem to have because it's been a great conversation. Andy, why don't we do the Travis's pick and then we'll close things out.
Okay, great. So here's the final question. What's the one use case for AI that most excites you and you think everyone should consider?
Well, currently I would go with the AI chatbot that I mentioned before, just because it does provide that ability to deliver service faster and better and in different ways and methods that really benefit our student community. If you want to expand that a little bit more, I would focus that specifically on the recruiting side of things to help prospective students. In higher education, we like to use a lot of lingo that prospective students, especially first gen students, don't necessarily understand. And so to have a tool that they can ask questions in their language and it respond in a way that makes sense to them, that's a huge benefit. That's a huge benefit, and it brings up society holistically. More of those first gen students we can get in, get their education, and change their families' lives. That's what it's all about. That's why we work in higher education, right? It's to impact people's lives forever, not just for, to your point, Phil, not just for those 4 years they're in school, but for the rest of their lives. So That would be my one golden nugget at this point. I think there's a lot on the academic side, but that would be the one that would really transform institutions and the students that come to us.
So quickly, let me ask, did you model your chatbot after the mascot of Seattle University?
We did not. We did
Okay.
not do that. No, again, it's up to every institution how they do that. What we wanted to do is we wanted to provide knowledge. Frankly, I just didn't want to be as cute with it. I just wanted to get the answers out there. So I took a little bit more of a vanilla approach to it. But yeah, it's been wildly successful thus far. So we must have done something right.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I totally get that. Well, Travis, this has been fantastic, and we have reached the end of our episode. So, a very big thank you to you for giving us some time and really really fantastic insights. I think this will be a great one. So, this has been the AI on the Quad podcast, and until next time.
Class dismissed.